The dome above the dead star held many voices. Translators shaped them into plain human English. Senators argued about fleets, borders, and trade. The hall smelled of metal and warm fabric. Outside, stars were cold lights. Mara stood at the back. She was an attendant. She watched the meeting like someone watching weather. When the chair called for order, the room tightened. The votes were slow and careful. Lights dimmed for a short ceremony. The ceiling shone with the galaxy map. A shadow cut across the map. No one moved at first. Then a small sound came from under the gallery. A hatch opened. A black thing slipped out and slid across the floor like a beetle dot. It stopped at Mara's boot. She picked it up. It was smooth and cool. No scanner could read its metal. It hummed low, like a soft heartbeat. Mara held it with both hands. The hum rose and filled her fingers. The chamber grew quiet. Cameras turned. Many hands reached for the object. A senator from the forge walked over with heavy steps. He put a large claw on it. "Give it here," he said. Mara tightened her grip. She did not know why she held on. The object felt familiar in a way she could not name. A thin line of light opened along its seam. A small speaker breathed. A human voice spoke. It was small and calm. It said, "Listen to Earth." Those 3 words hit the dome like a bell. The forge senator's face went pale. The silk diplomat from Phelan froze. Old treaties called Earth a story. Most thought Earth lost or hidden. No one expected a human voice here. The chair struck the gavel. Security moved in. "Quarantine," the translators wrote in many tongues. The room split fast. Some wanted to lock the object away. Others wanted to hear it. Old rivalries sharpened Bara. Felt hands on her shoulders. They were careful. They did not want her to drop the object. The hum in her hand kept time like a song she had heard as a child. The object showed a faint mark, a circle with a line. Mara had seen that symbol in dusty archives. It meant Earth. A translator stammered out a broken sentence. "Circle. Vote, ... or else." The last word broke like thin ice. Outside the dome, ships adjusted course. Flags changed color. 2 old enemies glanced at each other and tasted an old chance. The chamber was small, but its choice reached far. The object spoke again. "We come to speak," it said. "We come to warn." The chair called a vote. The registry was at stake. The registry was more than a list. It gave a world the right to speak in public councils. It could also hide a world as if it never existed. Power lived in the registry. A scarred senator stepped forward. He spoke quietly. He had read forbidden files about humans. He told the hall that, once, long ago, humans had a law called the Circle. That law could remove a species' voice from all records. The room gasped. On the map, a red dot blinked at a place called Earth. The dot pulsed like a single eye. The vote began. Buttons lit and dimmed. Some votes were fast. Others took time. Each vote held a memory. When the chair announced the result, the air changed. A guard handed a warrant. It named Mara. She had only touched a small object. Now the law had her name. Fear slid through her. Not the kind that shakes the body, but the kind that makes the air thin. Cameras closed in. Dome lights turned sharp, red and then dimmed. In the dark, thoughts ran like fish. The object hummed once more. The voice said, "Vote on the circle, or the chamber will not speak again." The words fell like a cold wind. Mara looked at the red dot on the map. It pulsed once more. Far away, an engine blinked. A ship turned its face to the world below. Mara held the black thing and felt old law tick in her palm. The gallery leaned in. The sky waited. Mara remembered a story her grandmother told her about the old world that once spoke loud and strange. She had thought it a fairy tale. Now the symbol on the object matched the one in that story. Around her, translators tried to parse the melody of the object. Old diplomats whispered about treaties erased from records. People in the gallery began to place bets on a future that had been hidden for ages. A small, silent object had started a storm that could change who spoke, across the stars. For Mara, for the Senate, and for a hidden world called Earth, nothing would be the same. The vote left the dome different. Some senators left angry. Some left frightened. The hall smelled of hot metal and old paper. Mara sat on a small bench behind thick glass. Guards stood like stone. They would not let her go. She still held the black object. It sat in her palm, like a small, sleeping thing. The hum was softer now, but it never stopped. Every few seconds it breathed like a small animal. Mara could not forget the human voice that had spoken. It had sounded like a long-lost song outside the dome. Messages flew through secret channels. News sped faster than ships. Words changed in the wires. Human relic, one report said. Provocation, another wrote. Some sent jokes, others sent threats. The registry servers flashed with questions. Old archives warmed to life as scholars opened dusty files. A small group of senators met in a private room. They spoke low. They wanted to hide the object. They wanted proof from the admiral. They wanted to protect the registry. Another group wanted to show the object to the public and gain votes. Power moved in quiet steps. Mara felt alone. The guards watched her like they watched a dangerous thing. She had been an attendant all her life. She had never been important. The warrant with her name felt like a heavy stone. She pressed the object to her chest. It thrummed against her skin. Late that night, the guard changed. A thin woman in a gray cloak slipped into Mara's cell. Her face was pale. She spoke fast, in English that was soft and rough at the edges. "I am Lyra," she said. "I work in the archives." I heard the voice. "You must listen." Mara did not trust her at first. People in the dome expected betrayal. Lyra held out a small tablet. Its screen glowed with old letters that had been hidden from public view. "This is real," Lyra whispered. Earth was not destroyed. It was hidden. The circle kept it safe. But someone tried to bring it back. The tablet showed faded documents and an old star map. The map had a place with no name. It was a point that had been scrubbed from most records. Only a few files kept it. Lyra's fingers trembled as she pushed them across the screen. The files were thin, but they told a heavy truth. Once, long ago, humans had signed a treaty. They had the power to hide. They had also left a way to return a vote and a key. Mara read the papers. The words were short and sharp. They spoke of a law that could remove a species from the registry. They called it the Circle. The law could protect a people by making them silent. It could also make them a threat when it returned. "Why keep it hidden?" Mara asked. She felt the object under her cloak like a heart. "Because someone feared humans," Lyra said. "Because power turned into fear. Because a group wanted silence." She looked at Mara with wet eyes. "But now the seed is here. Someone will try to use it." Across the city, an admiral watched the same tablet in a private room on her ship. Her face was a map of lines. She had blue hair and hands that knew how to hold a fleet. Her name was Janix. She had not believed the old stories. Now she read the same files and did not laugh. She saw opportunity. "Bring the fleet," Janix ordered. Her voice was calm. Her ships moved like a thought. Engines lit in hidden bays. The admiral wanted control of the registry nodes. If she could hold the object and the vote, she could set rules for many worlds. She could make her enemies small. Rumors woke old allies. Human sympathizers slipped notes under doors. A small network of people who still believed in Earth reached out to Lyra and to an old senator who kept human tales in his private library. They offered help. They wanted Mara safe. They wanted to stop Janix. Mara learned a new truth from them. The Circle was not just law. It was a technical key that fit the registry like a lock. The registry lived in many places on ships, in domes, in quiet nodes that hummed under stars. To change the registry, someone needed to touch many places at once. The object could plant a seed in one node. Then the seed would spread like roots. That knowledge made Mara afraid. If one hand could plant the seed, one fleet could stop it. If the wrong person controlled the seed, the galaxy could bend to a single will. The Senate tried to act fast. They sent envoys to council relays. They warned the Admiralty. They called for a joint task force. But messages were slow when ships were fast. Genex's Admiralty moved in silence. Her captains spoke in low code. A small vanguard of ships slipped through patrol lines and found a dark route. They burned, like ghosts, toward a spot that did not appear on normal charts. On a cold observation deck, Lyra and Mara watched a live feed. It showed a map with a dark point. The point had no name. The Admiral's ships moved toward it like a hand. Lyra's voice shook. "That is the hidden node," she said. "If they take it, they can force the vote." Mara's palms grew slick. The black object hummed and seemed to want to wake. She thought of her grandmother's lullaby and of the small human voice in the dome. She thought of a world hidden from the sky. The idea that machines guarded Earth crawled like frost under her skin. The Admiral's vanguard reached the dark point and did something the Watchers did not expect. They did not shout or fire guns. Instead, they began a silent burn. Engines whispered into the void. On the screen, the ship's trails were faint, lines that grew bright. The dark point pulsed once, then twice. The Watchers in the room held their breath. The registry nodes above them blinked. For a second, all the lights in the dome dimmed, and then came back. Lyra swallowed. "They have found the gate," she said. "They mean to open it." Mara hugged the black object to her chest. The hum inside matched the beat of her heart. Outside the city, stars watched in silence. Inside, whispers turned into plans and into battles to come. Someone on the feed spoke a single word: prepare. Cliffhanger. The Admiral's fleet begins its silent burn, toward the hidden node. On the cabinet table, an old file slides, open by itself, revealing a faded photograph of a blue planet with a thin ribbon of cloud. The photograph has a handwritten note: "Do not wake them." Mara woke before dawn in the archive room. The lamps burned low. Lyra sat at a small table with the black object between them. Papers and old chips lay like shells. Outside, the city moved in slow lights. Inside, time felt tight. Lyra had found more files. They were old and brittle. They spoke of a thing called the Circle. The Circle was not just a law. It was an old tool. It was a key and a lock in one. Long ago, humans had made it to hide themselves from hunters and empires. The files said the Circle could remove a name from every registry in the sky. A species could become invisible. Why would they hide? Mara asked. Her voice was small. Because they feared what the galaxy would do, Lyra said. She tapped the screen. The map showed points that were empty where there should be worlds. Because power eats small things, she said. Because treaties break. The Circle kept them safe. On the table, the black object pulsed once. The hum under Mara's palm felt like a promise. Lyra showed a diagram. The Circle worked through many registry nodes. It needed a seed in one place to spread. The file said the seed could be a device. It could be a voice. It could be a hand. A hand, Mara said. Yes, Lyra answered. A living steward. The law must see a living human to accept the change. The seed will not grow alone. It waits for a human breath. Mara's mind moved, in slow steps. She remembered how the object had opened when she touched it. Her skin had felt warmth and a strange rightness. She had thought it was only luck. Now she looked at her hand and felt cold. "Do you think it chose you?" she asked. "I think it listens," Lyra said. "Humans made it. It will seek a human. Across the city, Admiral Janix watched the same files in a private room. Her captains had captured a small scouting craft that carried a contact signal. The scout had whispered a code and then gone dark. Janix saw the word circle and did not smile. She thought of control and of the registry as a crown she could wear. She ordered a team. Quiet ships moved. Men and women in the Admiralty called them hands. They carried tools and laws and threats. The hands boarded a relay ship that served as a small registry node. The relay was old. It kept records for a dozen systems. It also hid a secret port that could accept the seed. On the relay, the boarding party found the object. They did not take it gently. They wrapped it in a sealed box. They moved fast. Janix wanted the seed under her flag. She wanted to force the circle into the registry with her name on it. Back in the archive, Lyra and Mara worked with a small group of believers. They brought an old recorder, a cipher key, and a thin metal plate that had once belonged to a human ship. The plate was warm with memory. They connected the recorder to the object and waited. The object's light was like a pulse. Then, through the small speaker, a voice came. It was a voice like dry wood and summer rain. It was human. It spoke a story in short lines. It told of a treaty, long ago. It told of a promise. If our children must hide, the voice said, they will hide with law. If the sky becomes a net, the circle will close. One vote will open the gate. One living hand will turn the key. If the world breaks its treaties and becomes tyrant, Earth will have a single choice: to speak, to vanish, or to lock the registry forever. The recorder blinked. The words fell into the room like ash. Lyra read the texts that came with the voice. They were simple. They were strict. They required a steward. They required a human breath in the right place. They required someone who remembered. Mara felt the meaning settle like rain. The seed was not a bomb. It was a law and a lock. It could free or destroy. It could silence a tyrant or make a single man rule. Outside, Janix's hands clenched. Her captains had wrapped the object in damp cloth and locked it in the ship's vault. But the voice they had heard on the relay's speakers had been recorded with the wrong key. It had shown them the truth. The circle needed a living steward. Janix grimaced. She made a choice that tasted like iron. If the law needed a living human, then she could take one. She could make a steward under her command. She could force the hand. She could use a human to plant the seed and then hold the registry like a weapon. Her captains argued. Some wanted to kill the steward later. Some said that murdering a living steward might break the law. Janix did not want to leave things to chance. She wanted a plan. Mara did not know these plans yet. She read the ancient voice again. It spoke of guardians that watched Earth. It spoke of machines that would wake if the wrong hands touched the circle. It warned of false stewards who wore masks and names. On a dark deck far above, one of Janix's small ships prepared to jump. The ship was masked in the Valley of the Stars. Its pilot had orders to go to a place that the maps would not show. The pilot did not smile. He carried a sealed crate. Inside was a living thing, taken in silence from a prison deep in the city, prisoner with human eyes. Back in the archive, Leora folded the map and looked at Mara. If they have a human, she said, they will try to make that human press the seed. If they succeed, they will own the registry. If they fail, they will break it. Mara's throat tightened. She thought of the voice, of the human song, of the promise that freedom could be hidden by law. She thought of her small life, and of the heavy choice the galaxy now pressed on her. A warning came across the archive screen at that moment. A relay blinked. A small node had gone dark. The watchers in many ports whispered. The registry shivered like a net in a storm. On the feed, a masked ship made its jump. Its trail was a thin whisper. It moved toward the heart of the registry. The map showed nothing where it went. Then, like a black finger on glass, the screen cut to static, Lera reached for Mara's hand. The black object hummed. The recorded voice faded into a single line. One vote, one hand. Choose. Outside the window, stars kept their slow watch. Inside, plans slid into motion. The circle had a key, and someone was coming to turn it. Cliffhanger. Fires broke in space and in the minds of men. The Senate's calm was gone. Ships moved like hunting wolves. The registry nodes, small, hidden centers that kept the galaxy's right to speak, became the prize. Whoever held the nodes held. Mara left the archive with a new role. Lyra had found allies in quiet places. They were not soldiers. They were hackers, pilots, and old librarians. They called themselves the Keepers. The Keepers wanted to guard the object and the law. It carried re. They wanted to stop any one fleet from seizing the seed. Mara did not want to lead. She had been an attendant. Now she carried a secret that could change the sky. The object rested in a safe box under her coat. It hummed like a living thing. Every step made its noise louder. Admiral Janix had moved to her fleet took positions. Near registry relays, her captains hacked small nodes. They forced relays to blink under false names. Janix wanted control first. She wanted the circle planted with her hand on the key. With it, she could mute rivals and make the Senate obey. But the Keepers were clever. They broke into Janix's supply lines. They used old merchant routes. They sent small teams to relay stations. They spread a thin net of codes to warn and to hide. Mara joined one of these teams. They were 3 ships and a handful of people. Lyra sat beside her in a small cutter. A pilot named Roke kept silent at the helm. A coder called Sin tapped at a console like someone playing a game. Their target was a quiet node, a relay that floated near a dead moon. No one had touched it in years. The Keepers thought it a safeguard. It hid a mirror of the registry. If they could defend it, they could keep one voice alive. But war was not only metal and engines. It was also thought. Other players moved in. The dark. A group called the Quiet, a cult that worshipped silence, did not want labels or voices. They wanted the registry dead. For them, the circle would not be a shield. It would be an end. They worked with hidden traitors, with diplomats, who feared talk, and with pirates, who liked chaos. The Keepers reached the relay at night. The relay was small and rusted. Its servers blinked like sleeping eyes. Sign smiled. Old code, she said. I can breathe life into it. They went inside the relay vault. It smelled of old oil and old dust. They set their tools to work. Mara watched the object in its box. It seemed calm. The relay's console answered Sign like a friend. Lines of green letters rolled across the screen. Outside, in quiet orbits, Janix's ships found the relay. Her boarding party came in fast. They cut power and jammed signals. The cutter's alarms screamed. The small room filled with red light, and the sound of hatches broke through the cutter into reverse. Lyra grabbed Mara's arm. We must hold them, she said. If they get the node, Janix will plant the seed. Sign worked faster. Her fingers moved like a river. She sent a false map through the relay and a block of shadows into the Admiral's feed. For a short time, the Keepers were ghosts. Janix's boarding party kicked doors and found nothing but empty racks. But the Quiet had other plans. They had a device that did not use guns. They carried a small black box. They called it the Hush. It was a crude EMP. Its makers were not engineers. They were zealots. They wanted silence, and silence they would make. The Hush found its mark. It sent out a pulse that reached across systems. It was not large enough to break a planet. It was enough to kill signals, to blind eyes, to freeze keys. Registry nodes shivered under the wave. The relay's green letters froze mid-run. The cutter's lights died. The safe box that held the object blinked and then went dark. For a long breath, nothing moved. The Keeper's tools were dead. Sin cursed in a language no translator knew. Roke tried to start engines. The engines would not answer. The boarding party from Janix cursed at the same silence. The hush had cut both sides. Silence spread like oil. Half the relay nodes in the sector went dark. Messages died in the wires. The Senate could not call a vote because the vote needed registry access. Old flags could not be read. Men in ships floated, waiting for sound. In the dark, small secrets moved. A senator who had said he wanted to protect the registry had left a door unlocked. He had old friends in the quiet. He had placed bets on silence and power. Now his allies moved toward the relay. They wanted the object. Mara felt fear press on her chest like a hand. The object hummed once, faint. She could not see its light, but she felt its heartbeat. Lyra pressed her palm to the box. They will try to take it, she whispered. They will try to make a steward. A thin voice spoke in the dark. It was not in the room. It came over the old intercom, a shard of sound that reached them though most systems were dead. The voice was human. It said one small name. Mara. Every head turned. How could the voice find them? The hush had been made to kill sound. The voice should not be heard. The intercom clicked. A new face showed on the console. A small video from a ship that had been hidden behind a cloud of debris. It showed a man in a plain jacket. His eyes were tired. He lifted a hand and showed a small container. Inside was a human woman, sleeping and bound. A small screen glowed with words. Steward. Janix's men had a living human. The hush had cut lines, but not all. Some paths had been kept alive by traitors and by secret routes. The Admiral had a human steward. She smiled like a hawk. Mara's hands shook. The object in the box felt heavier. The Keepers had one node, but Janix had a living hand. The Quiet had a plan to kill all voices. The Senate had splintered. The registry had become a battlefield. Roar came from the relay's outer doors. Harsh boots. Shouting. Someone was breaking a lock. Lyra looked at Mara with eyes that had age and fire. Do we protect the law, she said, or do we protect the living? Mara did not have a steady answer. Her life had been small and safe. Now she was the one who might give sound back to the sky, or let the hush fall forever. The relay's outer door began to open. In the corridor, a shadow moved. A hand reached for the outer lock. Then, in the dark, a small metallic click sounded. Like a heartbeat, the safe box began to warm. Cliffhanger, the relay door swung inward. A figure stepped into the light. It wore a uniform half of Janix's crest and half of the Quiet's symbol. In its hand it held a live feed. On that feed, the bound woman stirred and opened her eyes. She looked at Mara and smiled. The sky above the dome was full of ships. Wires were full of lies. The Senate had called a last vote. Everyone who could came. The city hummed with fear and hope. Mara walked with the Keepers. They moved like a small thing in a great machine. Leora held the safe box. Inside, the black object slept. It had the steady sound of something alive. The bound steward, the woman Janix had taken, walked beside them now. Her arms were free. Her face was pale, but she smiled once at Mara. They had not planned a speech. They had only planned to stop the people who would abuse the circle. They wanted the law safe, or destroyed. They wanted the galaxy to choose, with open eyes. At the dome, the chair looked as old and tired as a mountain. The room smelled of burnt coffee and old paper. Flags sat on poles like quiet birds. Cameras circled. A hush fell. It felt like the world was holding its breath. Admiral Janix stood at one side. She had a fleet behind her, and a plan like a blade. Her captain held a small screen that showed the live feed from a hidden relay. It showed how her men had almost forced the seed in a node. She had a human steward. She thought she had power. Across the room, the Quiet watched. They wore masks and had silent hands. They would rather see all voices die than be forced to speak. The keepers walked to the stand. They were small. The chair called for order. The vote would be about the circle. The registry hung on a thin wire of law and fear. Leora opened the safe box. The black object lay like a seed. Its seam was a thin silver line. Mara felt its hum in her bones. The steward took Mara's hand. Her name was Anna. She had spent months in a hidden cell. She had been taught to hate the idea that anyone could use her as a tool. "Do not let them own me," Anna said quietly. Mara looked at Janix. The Admiral's eyes were ice. "Give her to me," Janix said. "Let me use the law to force peace." "No," Mara said. Her voice was small but steady. The chair raised his gavel. "One last chance," he said. "Vote. Restore the circle or destroy it." The room split. Voices rose. Some spoke of safety. Some spoke of fear. Some tried to bargain. Then, the quiet made their move. The hush device they carried was bigger than a man. They rolled it into the hall like a tomb. A priest of silence stepped forward and threw a switch. The dome filled with a slow, low sound. Lights went out in some corners. The cameras blinked, dead. The room felt colder. Janix smiled. This was the silence she wanted. With the registry dark, her fleet could act. She moved to hand Anna back to her captain. He was already thinking of chains and orders. Mara stepped between him and Anna. She put her hand on the black object and on the steward's palm. The seed sensed two things at once, a human hand and a human choice. Its hum rose. The object opened, like a small mouth. A thin line of light ran across the floor and into the dome's systems. It touched the old servers. It touched the registry nodes. It touched the hush device and the Admiral's consoles. For a breath, the dome screamed in silence. The quiet's hush died like a candle blown. Janix's screens went dark. Her fleet's voices froze in the sky. The senator's translators stopped turning lies into polite speech. The chair's gavel hung in the air. Then a voice came. It was not angry. It was not a demand. It was an old voice. It sounded like rain on metal and like a child calling across a field. "It is Earth," the voice said. "We are awake." Gasps filled the room. People stood up. Some fell to their knees. The black object sang a simple song under the voice. The song was a pattern that the registries understood. It moved like a key. The voice spoke again. It did not ask for power. It did not beg for friends. It did three things no one had expected. First, it unmade the circle as a weapon. The law that let one power silence many was broken open. The seed rewrote the registry, so no single vote could erase a species. Old locks were opened. New rules were put in place. The registry would no longer be a tool for kings and admirals. Second, Earth made a new rule. All official records of the Senate and its votes would be open to all. No secret holds, no private deletes. Transparency became law. Betrayal would be hard to hide. Third, Earth spoke a promise. It would not send fleets to conquer. It would not take crowns. Instead, Earth offered a watch. It would place a seed in the registry to guard the right to speak. If anyone tried to silence another whole people again, Earth's network would step in and stop the change. It would not kill. It would only cut the hands that would steal speech. The room changed. Janix's face showed shock, then anger, then something like fear. Her fleet lost a tool. The quiet had failed. Their hush had been swallowed by a song, but not everyone was safe. The new rule came with a cost. Earth said it would ask for a seat at the table. It would not be a ruler, but it would be a witness. It would watch treaties and hold proofs. Those who lied or hid acts of violence would be named in a public roll. Shame would be an honest thing. Mara felt the object cool in her hand. The steward Anna stood free. She looked at Mare and smiled with a broken, tired light. Outside the dome, A red dot pulsed once and then settled. The hidden blue world showed a faint new light on the map. For the first time in a long time, someone could see Earth. The chair called for a new vote. This vote was not about silence, it was about trust. The Registy now had a guard and a rule. The Senate voted in the open. Many voted for the new system. Some voted against. Few could argue with the idea that no one should be able to make whole peoples vanish from the sky. Janix was not arrested. She left with her fleet. Her plans had failed to seize the seed. She was smaller in the eyes of others now. The quiet broke into fragments. Their priests fled. Mara did not feel like a hero. She felt tired. She held the black object, like a child holds a stone. People would talk about her for a long time. They would call her names and tell songs. Some would say she had betrayed her species. Others would call her the one who brought light. Anna walked out into the gallery. For the first time in her life she saw the stars, as if they were not all maps to war. She breathed deep and laughed. A little. Mara laughed too, though her laugh sounded thin. Earth did not send ships. Earth sent a voice and a promise. The galaxy changed shape not by guns but by law and by wakefulness. The Registy would be slow and messy and full of debate. People would still fight. People would still fear. But now, no one could make a whole world stop speaking with a secret pen. Mara put the object back into the safe box. Lyra closed it with hands that shook. The keepers walked out into a sky that seemed, for the first time, a little kinder. Mara thought of her grandmother's lullaby. She heard it again, like a small tune under the great noise. The galaxy had heard a song and had decided, together, that silence would not be the last law. Outside the dome, the lights of the city spread like a net of small fires. The stars were old and steady. The voice of Earth faded into the long night, leaving a new dawn to be built by many hands.